Great morning, everyone. Welcome, everybody back
Afternoon,
to
sir.
it's the afternoon,
No.
everyone. Welcome back to the Nest Network live event. This is week 2. This is the Nest Network where we plan to nurture. Our goal is to nurture, equip, stretch, teach, and transform you, our listeners, and at the same time doing the same thing for ourselves. My name is Arsineo, Bottle Papa Dodson, and this is our crew. Welcome you guys back to week 2. I'll pass it over to Terra. Talk about what we discussed on last week's live.
Well, last week live, we talked about the calling, and we're talking about the purpose of the calling. Why do you need to pay attention to the calling? And when it comes to you diving into your business or your new adventures in life, and we talked about how important the calling is. And so we want you to go back and like, share, subscribe, and definitely go back and listen so that you'll get caught up on the things that we discussed last week. But we have a new topic this week. Aisha, what are we talking about this week?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, and again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. Like, share, and subscribe. I want you all to make sure you're staying connected. We want you to make sure you're staying connected with the Nest Network. But today, we're focused on how your calling is impacted by your friends, by Bay, by all those people around you. And our case study today is Jay Morant. Now, I know you all, well, some of you all, if you're into sports, I'm not as much, so it's all right. But this is a topic that we have all been following because as we are introducing the different things that we're doing that are aligned as we're talking about the calling, I think it's important to utilize real life case studies that we can discuss and relate to and really connect to from an aspect of how could the relationships that we are engaged in impact what we are called to do. And real quick, because, I'm going to pass it on a bottle to break down the background of Jay Moran. Again, when we think about our calling, a lot of you all out there might have heard about your purpose. What is my purpose? What is my purpose? So you might have a specific area that you're focused on as far as your purpose. Maybe you've been your purpose is aligned to financial management. Maybe your focus is project management, like Ashley, or maybe you're in a purpose where it's aligned to helping youth, like Terra is doing, and helping them navigate emotional mastery and so on. Or maybe it's something related to the tech side of things. But the interesting thing is within that specific gift, talent you have, you're called to different spaces and places to support. So you might be in this season working in a middle school. Well, maybe next year you'll be at a high school, or maybe you'll be at the Board of Education and so on. So we can be called to multiple places to utilize those gifts and the talents that God has been able to bless us with to support different initiatives. So we want to look at Jay Morant and his background and just utilize him solely as a case study that we can relate to talk about how can our calling be impacted with our decision making, especially when we have these circles of influences that we have. We have friends, again, we have family, we have Bay, right? That partner that you have all these different people or even associates. Maybe it's an organization that you work for, and you have a certain image that you have to maintain as a service member, right? There's a level of influence and that I have as a service member, and there are a circle of people that I have to consider whenever I'm navigating my day-to-day, even when I'm not in uniform. So when we talk about your calling, there's so many people that you'll encounter within it that will have a level of influence on you. The question is, will they have an impact on your calling on the positive side or the negative side? So Bottle, I'm gonna pass it on to you. If you can give the audience a background about Jay Morant, what's going on with him, what he's been navigating, and then we're going to have a little chit chat about it. And again, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. All right, like, share, subscribe,
Like,
tell all your friends and them. All
all
right,
tree, all
all
tree.
tree. Mm.
Yep. So Ja is a NBA basketball player. He's been in the league not very long. He's a member of the Memphis Grizzlies. And if you follow the NBA, if you follow the news of sports at all, you probably heard about him and his interactions with firearms, guns, and how it's frowned upon in the industry or the NBA, where they don't want that bad stigma around the organization. And I've heard a lot of people. So I tell you, he had an incident a few months ago to where he was in a club and he was waving a gun around. There was a lot of money and all types of things around, and he got suspended. I think it was for 8 games he was suspended for. And then 2 months later, I want to say 2 months later, it happened again. And this wasn't him recording himself after the suspension. It wasn't him recording himself. It was him in the passenger seat of a car. It looked like he was in the passenger seat of a car. And one of his friends, somebody associate that he was with, was live on a social media platform and turned the camera towards him. And he just so happened to have a weapon next to his head, which is questionable already, even if you're not a superstar. And then they quickly dropped it and removed the video from social media. But that's what Ja has been dealing with. And so right now it's an open investigation. What the league is saying is an open investigation as to what to do with Ja Morant. And so we're going to open up the floor for conversation about how Ja's calling to be a professional athlete, like his skill, his talents has put him in a position that most people will never get the opportunity to experience. But his circle, and I personally feel like it's internal, but we can talk about that. We can discuss that. His circle, that he doesn't have the right protection, obviously, around him. His circle is impacting his calling in a negative way, I would say. So what say you guys? What's going on with Ja or Jay?
I think there's a couple of things going on. I think a few things. One is I'm young. I have a lot of money. I have brand deals. I'm excited. I've gone to the NBA playoffs. And I also am intrigued with the level of success that I'm having, right? And so I'm going to transition and pivot this to sort of everyday life when we are sort of on the up and up. And so oftentimes what I think happens is that we find ourselves in a position of, all right, like I'm feeling like almost like invincible in some ways, right? Where I can do certain things, I can say certain things. I've had a good streak, and so sometimes this aspect of like I'm doing me has a very limited like scope and lane, because you just doing you is never just that. We know that it affects everyone around you. So I think there's 2 questions that I think that we have to ask ourselves is that as we are growing and elevating to the next level, the question is who sits beside me, literally on the passenger seat. And who literally sits beside me, who sits behind me, who sits in front of me to help and steer me just in terms of influence and impact. I think a lot of times too, we often hear the phrase, and we all have had to make the decision. Sometimes you just got to leave folks behind. And I think we have to be careful a little bit about that, because as we've all have, I think mostly we've read about Dr. Darius Daniels' book, Relationship Management. I just think too, like we just have to somehow edit or limit maybe the types of conversations and the people that we have around us. So I think we have to start thinking through, what does that look like? If I'm going to my next level of success, it's who's really going to be in my passenger seat. Yeah.
That's such a good point. And there's so many layers to unpack on this. You start with, let's just stick with Ja in basketball. So much of his time has been spent preparing to play the game, to enter into the league, the draft process, the scouting process, all of these things. But do you have the people in your circle that are preparing you for the other pieces, the financial impact, the responsibility? What happens when you become the one that made it and now everybody's looking to you because you're the meal ticket, right? And the obligation, we talk about, the survivor's remorse, right? The one that made it out, feeling guilty about all your homies that you left behind. You are the one that made it out. And we're not saying that you got to turn your back on your people, but you can't let your people jeopardize where you're moving in this season that you're moving into. Some stars navigate that well, some don't. We know for a fact that, quote unquote, keeping it real has derailed a lot of careers for some people. Know what I mean? And it's just such a tenuous thing to navigate, especially if you don't have the right people in your ear. You don't have the right internal, just to Bottle's point, right? To Arseneo's point, you don't have the right internal compass to keep you on the right track. How do you keep that all straight? I got millions of dollars. My face is on the cover of everything. And I feel obligated to take care of all my people, all while keeping it real and being the face of the franchise. That's a lot to navigate when you're 20 something. That's a lot to navigate when you're 40 something, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. My prayer is that he gets it together. Unfortunately, history shows that for most people, this doesn't go well. And I just pray that's not the case for Ja.
Very good point, Darrick. Very good point here. In my state, what I would say towards that as well, too, is like, okay, who is the right people? From his perspective,
Right.
he probably has the right people, or, and that's just him making, childish mistakes that we do as kids. But it's like, if he don't have the right people around him now, how can he find the right people? How do he even know who the right people is? So who is going to be the person or people to tell him, or to be the person, to say, hey, let me take your hand and show you how this works, or let me do this for you. And it's going to come to a level of trust. And and again, I do have the money, right? From his perspective. So it's like a ton of stuff to navigate in that, and him being like probably the first generation of money is going to be, I don't know. It's like, that's where I'm kind of stuck at. It's like, the dude is making, childish mistakes, but that happens. But it takes time. It takes that guiding hand to help navigate you through this. So that's my take on it. It's like, I don't know.
I think that's a good question. Who is the right people? And when you think about his dynamic of being parent-child, let's just go parent-child. Now the child is the provider. You know what I mean? So it may be some pullback on the parent to say, hey, this is destructive behavior. You get what I'm saying? Hey, you don't need to do that, because the child is looking like, listen, I'm providing for you now. What you gonna say? And the people around him, we got to look at the level of people around him. What are you going to say to me? You know what I mean? I know that he went to the commissioner and things like that, and I'm sure they thought they had a good conversation. But when he went home, there was another group of people. When he got back, with his crew, there was another group of people. And so sometimes when you are the person who is the, higher influence, your level of influence got to go up too. Like the people that you hang around, the people that you go to, the people that you're, the goats in the game. And sometimes as young people, you don't want to do that. You don't want to listen to those people. You just want to do you. So I just think it gets into some self-sabotaging behavior. This is self-sabotaging. This is self-inflicted. You get what I'm saying? This is not, something that you could say, he did this because he was influenced that way. No. You already knew. The people you were hanging with already knew there was already something out there. So this is self-sabotaging. Who helped you to stop that? That is an internal thing that definitely I think you got to seek higher to be able to deal with that issue. What do you guys think?
I think what you're sharing is like really, really good. As someone is a renounced thug, no, I'm just playing thugette. But no, in all seriousness, one of the things that really stood out to me in really researching this that Lil Wayne talked about, there's a generational aspect of it, right? We can definitely have a perspective of, what we should and shouldn't do and so on. But I think that it's important to even with the work you're doing, Terra, we're working with youth. It's allowing you to kind of stay connected to understand what is their perspective? How are they navigating the world in today? I mean, how are they navigating the world in today's world where there are cameras in their face, cell phones, going live is a norm. I mean, putting their business out there is a norm. And that is the lifestyle that Jay Morant or John Morant, I don't know how to pronounce it, y'all, just Mr. Morant, okay? It's one of those two. But anyway, the lifestyle that or the life that he has navigated as someone who, again, West African migrant family. We came here. I mean, my family was amazing. I mean, they were able to build a lifestyle that was pretty awesome. But the reality was when I went outside into the big bad world, yes, my parents had a level of influence, but if you consider the age of influences, there's a season of time where you're influenced by your family members and so on. And then it transitions into when you hit about 12 years old, now it transitions to who has impact in you more are those on the outside. I'm watching my daughter who's 10 years old, who's already navigating social acceptance. So you have peer acceptance as such a big thing where you will see where someone can come from a good home. A lot of people talked about, oh, his background, he's not from the hood, or he's not from this, and he went to this and he went to that. But again, when you are seeking social acceptance as someone who was, it became a point where I did not worry about what mama and them had to say. It was all about what my friends had to say. And I was trying to fit in. I was trying to shape myself to be accepted within that social circle. So I found myself in situations and in places and spaces where I was leaning more into what my friends wanted me to do, my associates and so on. So they had more of an influence on me at a certain time. And what I've been trying to do now with my daughter is ensure that I am coming behind her because she's learning things from her friends that I never talked to my parents about. So I'm talking to them about that now. She's learning things that I just would have never thought, they'll be talking about at 10 years old. And I'm like, okay, let me make sure I piggyback that and give a perspective as well. And recognize also, I literally had this conversation with her the other day. It was like a peer pressure situation where they wanted to boot some girl out their crew or whatever. And she was being pressured to be the only one in the group talking to her. And I was just like, you can do what you want. You don't have to follow the crowd. And one of the things that stood out to me when she said that, well, Mom, I don't want to lose my friends. I said, my baby. And I can understand what that feels like. So I said, hey, listen, this is my perspective, but I have to allow you to learn on your own. Right? Have these experiences where you might fall down, and I'm always going to be there to pick you up unless you rob somebody or something dangerous, and I'm sorry, you just gonna have to go to jail. But anyway, love my kids, but wrong is wrong, right is right. Anyway, sidetrack, bird, squirrel. Anyway, so I'm just being silly, y'all. But in reality, I really had to make sure that I am coupling this social acceptance, this thrive. And like, again, once our kids get to a certain age, or people even as us, when we were children, once we get to a certain age, that family part is not going to be that influential. It's going to be all these other perspectives that young little son that you had, daughter you had, is going to start learning. And there's going to be a point where they do have to make their own decisions, and they're going to have to navigate the world in a different way based off of what their worldview is. So, I lean on the side where it's easy to say it's mom's fault, dad's fault, the girlfriend's fault, the friend's fault. But the reality is we do have to stand in our decision making and learn those lessons and tap into those individuals that's going to support them. And before I bounce it back the bottle, Ashley mentioned Darius Dance earlier, and he talks about relationships in 4 groups: your friends, you have associates. So of course, your friends, those are the people that you ride or die. You want to tell them any and everything. Associates, not so much. Maybe you're associated with them because you play sports with them. Maybe you're associated with them, because you all work in the same organization, or maybe you're business partners, but you don't really have that close-knit relationship. Assignments, of course, is what it is that you are going to navigate people that might be a short assignment, where you're only going to be in their life for a short amount of time. And there's a purpose behind it, that God has you in their life, or vice versa. And then advisors are those individuals who you can tap to advise you in maybe different seasons in your life. You might have long-term advisors or short-term advisors. And my perspective right now, I feel like Jay Morant is in a space where he needs to tap more into advisors. And the reason why I say that is because what he's navigating is the organization that he's in that's given him this wealth, I don't know if they have more of an influence in him, or not more of an influence, but they're the ones that are more of like the focus point. But I'm reaching more to advisors who could change it. I mean, turn into friends, or turn into those people that are those long-term relationships, but be those individuals that can say, hey, I am in this organization. I wasn't prepared for leadership. I wasn't prepared to be the breadwinner. I wasn't prepared for half of these things that I am dealing with. And I feel like advisors who have been in the NBA, who have navigated these things, are the best support systems maybe right now to give him a perspective, because your friends might not understand what that's like if you don't have friends that's experienced this. Your associates won't, because, you know, they're here and there. You don't really know if they're here for the right thing. And then your assignments, again, you might be assigned to support them. So, you know, my recommendation is for him to lean into those advisors within that space that can really support him in understanding, how do I navigate this new lifestyle that only they have a perspective on because they've actually lived it. So what are your thoughts about that bottle, or anyone else in regards to some aspects of it?
Let me hop back in there. So like Darrick said earlier, there are layers to this. There's so much to unpack. And I believe it begins with society. It ends with society too, because if it wasn't for social norms and the opinions of society, this wouldn't be an outrage. But because we have structure and we have systems in place in our government and in our world that we live in, this is crazy activity. Like this is not normal. I'm sorry. Can we say, we can't say it. This is not normal activity. And so, but the challenge, I think, comes from society having expectations and us not living up to them, or desiring to live up to them, but not equipped to do so. And so, Ja, how do we know, like you said, Aisha, we switch from our parents being the primary source of approval to society being a overwhelming source of approval? When does that switch happen? And just because the switch happened, am I equipped to handle this? Like, am I psychologically equipped to filter all of this information that I have coming in and these different expectations? And so maybe there's a gap for the N.E.S.T. network team. Maybe because I've never been in the NBA, I've never played professional sports, but shouldn't there be some type of system in place? We knew LeBron was going to be huge when he was in high school. We knew, and Ja probably was the same way. These athletes that are star bound, we can see them. Maybe there's a space where a system needs to be put in place, like, because you don't know what to look for. You don't know how to find something. You don't know what to look. He doesn't know that he needs to be tailoring his group unless somebody tells him. He doesn't know that I need people in those 4 different groups that you just mentioned, the associates, the advisors. He doesn't know. How do we know? And I'm not trying to take the blame off of him. I'm one of the people that feel like this is internal. Like, at this point, there should be certain things instilled, values, morals, and principles that will stop you from taking these types of actions. However, if those things aren't instilled, we need system in place. And maybe the league needs to step up and put something in place. Like, hey, as an athlete that's coming into the league, we've seen this happen. Instead of just throwing money, you know what I'm saying? We've seen this happen in the past. We got the data. We've seen, and this event with Ja, this situation with Ja, could prove to be beneficial to so many people down the line that's coming into the NBA that could potentially fall in the same footsteps. But because we've had this interruption, this event, now we can put systems in place. And that's mostly how problems are solved. They got to become a problem first.
But here's the issue. Ja's not the first person that this has happened to.
When does it start?
By a long stretch. So again, the layers. You have the layers of, you have this large organization that's all about public relations and image. So there's a branch of it that doesn't want this in the public eye. Social media makes it really hard for them to keep it out of the public eye. So they're trying to minimize the impact of this player's behavior for selfish reasons, because we don't want this to harm the brand. So what happened? So Nike has pulled all the imagery of Ja down, but they haven't pulled the product off the shelf.
You better.
Right? I don't want his image out there because his image is tainted, but I do not want to interfere with the flow of the cash because his product is still selling. So there's a part of this where the people that we want to turn to for the solution may, in some part, be part of the problem.
Is
So
it
when you,
selfish though if there's a contract? You knew.
I get it, but there are elements of that contract that are created that are self-serving. I'm not saying selfish because it's bad. It's selfish because it is what it is. There's a profit motive at the end of this. So where's that line between we need to do the right thing to protect the contract, to protect the shareholders, to protect the brand, and then where are we doing the right thing because we're trying to protect this human being, this player that we've invested in?
So I think to your point on the multi-layers, corporates, all right, we got corporate from the sense of brand deals, and then you got corporate because the NBA is a corporation too. And then I think we have not mentioned this word maybe out loud, but it's one of our favorites. It's accountability. And so and so I just saw this framework that I'm gonna, be working inside, but it paints the picture of an accountability system. It says systems and procedures are just one part of it. As Bottle said, what systems need to be in place. Then there's this aspect of initiative and personal responsibility that make the whole thing work. And so I think it boils down to it's the initiative to say, if I'm seeing a pattern, because again, if this didn't happen, it would have been something else. So if this behavior is still going on, whether it is the gun being waved or you as a working professional, you just keep getting fired, there's a piece of this where there's an accountability aspect that has to be examined. And then I love this aspect of taking that initiative, because you gotta want to make some sort of change. You gotta want to be able to say how and what exactly do I do next. So
And if I was to attach it to like the average person, because again, this is just solely a case study, but for a lot of you all out there that are navigating, because again, with the podcast that will soon launch, we really go deep into talk about the calling. And one of the topics that we talk about within this group here is, like, are you are you called to even do that, right? And then once you're within that calling, of course, there are going to be so many distractions and different things that you have to navigate to ensure that you are truly like grounded in it and focused on what you need to do. But as you get into your calling, I mean, if you did some research, they do have like an NBA transition rookie program camp situation. And I do believe you need more than just a camp. But how many of us out there who truly believe and know for a fact I'm called here have taken time to say, you know what, let me really make sure I'm equipped and prepared to go into business. What do I need to, and what does come with being a business? It's not just an LLC. It's not just this, but it's truly, I'm stepping into a leadership role, right? I need to find out and I need to talk to people and get some advisors around me and people that can really help me navigate this transition that I'm about to make. Because again, that is extremely important. And I think that this is definitely an example of us reminding ourselves to ensure that we are doing that. We're taking time to say, okay, I strongly know this is my calling. I've been called to go do this. Now, in order to prepare for it, I'm getting that support. And yes, you might start off with a camp, a program, a course, a coach, or whatever. But it might start with a course. And then it might say, you know what? I need ongoing support. So I need a coach. I need someone that's going to help me through this, right? Because there are going to be different tiers that you're going to navigate as you face different challenges. So, please look at this from, again, an example of us just really reflecting in this season you're in now and asking yourself, what are the things about this process I'm not considering that could impact me, as well as, again, I'm getting advice from the wrong side or I'm hanging around the wrong side and it's not necessarily going to help me within this calling.
I know we're wrapping this up, but it's in my head. Like, just because you're well equipped to do a thing, are you really called to do that thing? Just because you got the skills, does it mean that this is maybe job would have been better suited for another area? And like, I'm just saying, I'm just paying Angel's assistant, but
It's back to
That's
what
a
we
very
said.
good
It's
point.
one thing to be talented at basketball. That doesn't automatically mean you're equipped to be a multimillionaire, face of a franchise, leader of an organization. Those are all
Prodigal
other things.
son.
People just try to draft all those other things in right behind the fact that
Because you're talented, you definitely can handle all of these things.
Because you got an
But
outside
then-
jumper, you should be able to do everything else.
That's it.
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
it. I mean, they should be able to support him in being the eye of the of the league or whatever, the star or whatever. That's when they have the people that's claiming him to be the one, the face. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, if that's the case, then they should provide him with face support. You know
What
I'm
you're
saying?
saying is they should nurture him in such a
Exactly.
way that he can grow into this role and then equip him
Yes.
That's
with
it.
the tools.
There you go.
Exactly.
Right.
This is the system. I mean,
That's it.
it benefits everybody if they do this. When they do this, it benefits everybody, especially the young adult that's coming into this role. I mean, more children, if he's in a position to where he can influence positively more people, it's going to bring more eyes to your organization, the league, and there's generations now. So little kids, they're going to be talking, I want to be like Ja, as opposed to parents trying to keep them off the social media, seeing what's going on with Ja, and so they won't be influenced this way.
Yeah, and I mean, I was going to even say, like, again, this is a reminder as well. Like when you consider organization, say you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you can't depend on the organization to prep you, because as you can see, I'm the NBA, and again, I'm not big into sports, but this is not the first time that the NBA has ran into a quote unquote bad boy. All right, or bad gal. That's not the first time they've ran into situations where someone is tainting the organization. So even from that perspective, if they're saying, okay, let's consider the demographics, let's consider their backgrounds and so on, let's ensure the face has what's necessary. And it's interesting that an organization, if you think about all sports organizations and spaces like that, run into the same issue as well. So again, sometimes I tell a lot of people, sometimes when you are choosing or you're navigating where you want to navigate, you really want to ask yourself, okay, does this space and place have the resources that I truly need to be effective? And if not, who can I connect with, right? I.e. the N.E.S.T. network, to really help me navigate these different spaces and places, because we shouldn't be hearing these situations happening over and over again. So if there's a breakdown within the organization and you're aware of that, what can you now do to ensure that you're equipped to grow and become an effective leader wherever you're called to go?
But you don't know what you don't know. That's the missing part. You don't know what you don't know, because I believe that they feel like they made it. I got it all figured out. If all the things I've done up to this point led me here, I've accomplished success, which is the first red flag, because you never accomplish success. It's an ongoing process. But I've made it. Now I got it all figured out. Who can tell me anything? You don't know what you don't know.
They saw a finish line.
You need a circle.
Yeah, they saw a finish line when they should have heard a starting pistol. They really were just at the beginning of what needed to happen, and they threw their hands up and was like, "Mama, I made it," and they were just beginning.
Oh, and it's just the beginning too. And we just think about the ending. Him leaving the NBA. About how you're gonna transition that and how you're gonna set yourself up.
Come on, don't get me started. The veterans that already retired from the NBA, especially the veterans that had these encounters and incidents. What is the program? Where? How?
Transform again. N.E.S.T. network.
So here's the big takeaway from this whole conversation, and I think through this discussion we can all agree it's kind of equal parts personal responsibility and accountability, but also, do you have the right circle around you? Have you put the right people in place? Are the right people in your ear? Now, we've used Ja as kind of our case study here, but you can transport this to a whole lot of people, including the six of us. We can look at our own lives and say, do we have the right people in our ear? No matter what space we're navigating, no matter what profession you're in, it all comes down to making the right decisions with the right people so that you can get the best possible outcome in the long term.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, That's today's show. All right. I mean, wow, wow, wow. I hope you took notes. Love to see that you all are in the chat chatting, chatting it up. Hey, Katita, how you doing? What's up, T West? Gail Kennedy, Shantae, hey, Tree, and everyone else out there I might have missed, but thank you all for sharing your perspective. And again, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Make sure that you're dropping comments. What is your perspective on it? And again, don't just think about it from one perspective, right? From the case study. Think about it from the bigger picture. Think about, okay, how does this impact me? What have I done to make sure that in this season that I'm doing the preparation before the next calling, right? Or maybe you can even go back and say, okay, what did I miss from this last season of, and maybe an area you could say I could have grown from the next time, right? So again, we're here Sundays. All right, check out the flyers, 3 p.m. and all that jazz. Darrick, give them all the good stuff about where they can find us and connect with us for the next conversation. And shout out to y'all for, again, this second live that we did and tapping in. That rhymed too, by the way. I'm just saying.
Grateful.
For sure. Yeah. If you check out the show notes, you'll see our link tree where you can tap in with us. Hopefully you're like, share, and subscribe our YouTube channel, but also on LinkedIn. And we have more coming. So stay tuned.
See y'all next time.
All right. See
Bye,
y'all
y'all.
next time. Bye.
See y'all later.